Hello and welcome back, Microsoft Office students and people who are interested. We're going to now do the Develop Your Skills portion for Microsoft Excel Chapter 3. Chapter 3 has to do with formulas, so I'm going to get to the book and start the process we've normally been doing. If you've seen some of the other videos, we look at the book first and then we open the app and start to do the steps. I'm going to start my internet. I'm going to go to the address bar and put in the book website, which is bookshelf.vitalsource.com. I'm going to press enter. I've been in the book relatively recently, so it's already signed me in. Remember to use whatever sign-in information that I've already supplied for you, that email address and password. Make sure you get into the Office 2019 book. It generally leaves you off where you left off. Here it says that I'm in Excel Chapter 2, but we're going to be using Chapter 3. So I click the table of contents on the left, go to Unit 3, Microsoft Excel, and I go to Chapter 3, Performing Calculations Using Functions. So functions are a lot like formulas. It's mathematics also. It's page 99. So anybody who wants to jump to page 99, of course, you can go down here and do it that way. I'm going to go to the chapter opener, close my table of contents, Performing Calculations Using Functions. Here's what we're going to learn a little bit. In this chapter, we'll use functions and formulas to make complex calculations quicker and easier. You'll also learn about the difference between relative and absolute cell references and practice using both in your formulas. That's really important in absolute cell references, how you can lock in a square that doesn't want to change so that you can copy your formula and not have that square change. So we're going to create formulas with functions. We're going to use AutoSum, which is one of the most popular, which means to add, use relative and absolute cell references and formulas. We're going to define names for cells and ranges and use names and formulas. Really great stuff to be very efficient. I'm going to go ahead and size my book by dragging my window from the title bar off the right side of the Windows screen. That's really cool because it automatically snaps. I'm usually small enough when the font changes, so I'm going to click here on the big A, little a, make my zoom a little bigger, just make it a little easier for us to see. And I'm going to move into the next portion of the chapter now. I just need to scroll again. Sometimes you have to scroll a couple of times to make it work. Using functions and formulas. Functions are an important part of Excel, so how do they define functions? Specific formulas that take an input value or values in the form of arguments, performs an operation and returns a value or values. Functions simplify the creation of formulas and are useful for lengthy or complex calculations. So an example of a formula is exactly what they're doing here. See, here's a formula you made similarly in the last chapter. You did one that was equal 3 squares. This one's A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4 and so on for a while. Instead, Excel already knows how to add. You just have to call upon the function. The function is called sum. Sum means to add. There's other functions like count, average, max, find the biggest, min, find the smallest. So there's functions galore based upon a bunch of different subjects. And after you choose the function name in Excel, you still start with an equal sign. You can type the function name. You have to put parentheses, and inside parentheses would be the arguments. So they're showing you an example of the one that adds here. So arguments is what's inside the parentheses. This one says equal sum. Sum means add, A1 to A12. This one says equal sum, A1, comma A4, comma A7, colon A12. So that's adding A1 to A4 plus A7 to A12, whatever those squares are. Okay. Functions can be typed directly in a cell, or if you know the name of the function you wish to use or insert it a number of other ways, can be inserted a number of other ways. So the ribbon way, the FX on the formula bar, there's even a whole function ribbon. It's called the formulas ribbon, if I remember correctly. When you insert a function by typing, Excel will suggest the names for the functions as you type. For example, typing an S will generate a list of functions that start with the letter S. When you look at this book on your own, these see it in actions are fun to watch because they actually show you how to do them. That's what I'm here to do. Is I'm here to do these skills with you, so hopefully watching me will help you. Okay, so I'm going to do Develop Your Skills E3D1. That's E3D1, meaning Excel Chapter 3, Develop Your Skills 1. It says Start Excel and open E3D1 Summer Grades. do a save as and name it fall grades, E3D1 fall grades. So first I'm going to open Excel by going to Start, scroll down to letter E's, click Excel. Remember, you could always search. There's multiple ways to do that. I'm going to click here on Open. I'm going to click Browse. Remember, your folder is hopefully just here in the Documents folder. You could start going in. I'm a couple of folders in, so I'm going to go here. Now I'm in the Office 2019 student files. I'm going to go into Excel, Chapter 3, and we're opening up Summer Grades, E3D1 Summer Grades. Now I'm going to snap this to the side by dragging off the left side. Zoom in a little bit. We do add a few columns, so I don't want to zoom in too much, if I remember correctly. I'm going to go to File, Save a Copy. Yours will likely say Save As. And I'm going to go up here, erase the word summer, but keep the rest of that part and type fall. So you're changing it from summer to fall. I click Save. I've done step number 1. Step number 2, on the final grades worksheet, click cell G6. So keep in mind there are multiple worksheets down here at the bottom, quizzes, projects, and exam. So I just wanted you to be aware we will be switching sheets at times, so it's really important we're on the correct sheet. On the final grades worksheet, click cell G6, and then type equal sum, parenthesis, C6, colon, F6, parenthesis. Notice how it puts a block around the squares you're using. Isn't that really cool? And it says click the check mark. So notice your answer is 37% because they made this a percentage. They made the number format percent. But look here in the formula bar, equal sum C6 colon F6 is giving you that answer. So in other words, it's adding these 4 squares. Okay, step number 3, in cell G7. So click down 1 square, type equal sum, parenthesis. Use the mouse to highlight C7 to F7. Now, if you highlight wrong, just go back and highlight correctly. No special technique. Just go highlight correctly if you highlighted wrong. And then click the check mark. So you got these 4 squares added up. They're just showing you a different technique, okay? And in a moment, they're going to show you the better technique, which is called AutoSum. Step number 4, point to the fill handle in G7 and double click. Freshness, we copied the formula down, just like we did in the last chapter for those who did chapter 2. Save our changes. The AutoSum feature. The AutoSum feature not only makes it easy to find some of the simplest functions, it also helps identify and enter the range of cells you are most likely to use in your function. Often when you have a column of numbers, you want to add a total at the bottom of the column. It's the most popular function in all of Excel. AutoSum will automatically search for adjacent data either directly above or to the left of the selected cell. Therefore, selecting the cell at the bottom of a column or the right side of a row will automatically have it suggest data. Just know if it's selecting the wrong data, your job is to select the correct data. It's not very complicated. So it's just making a suggestion, okay? Sum, average, count, max, and min are other common functions. They work the same way, equal the word, parenthesis, whatever squares you want to include. Average calculates the average, count finds how many there are. It's counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this particular case, how many students are there? Well, we could do a count formula to tell us how many students there are. Max finds the biggest value in a group of squares. Min finds the smallest value in a group of squares. I believe they have you use some of these in the review exercises at the end of the chapter. I don't remember if we do any in our Develop Your Skills exercises. They can be found by going to Home, Editing, and clicking the AutoSum menu button. Remember the arrow. Arrow means menu button. Insert function. For more complex function, the insert function opens a dialog box that allows you to search for functions and enter function arguments. In the insert function dialog box, you can search for your desired function by keyword or browse by a category. After choosing the function arguments dialog box opens, from which you enter the numbers, cell references, or criteria to use in the function. So that's really handy when you're using functions you've never used before and very complicated functions. They can get really heavy and complicated. They're not so easy, some of them, because they're very field specific. Develop your skills E3D2. We're going to skip step 1, no save as needed. Step 2, click the quizzes worksheet tab. Quizzes. Now I have to zoom in a little just to make it easier for you to see. Move my picture maybe. Okay. Step 2 says, click the quizzes worksheet tab and click cell H6 underneath the heading quiz total. Step 3, choose home editing AutoSum. Home editing group AutoSum. That's just that sideways looking E or M. Some people have sideways looking M. Notice the formula it's suggesting. It's suggesting sum of C6 to G6, which actually looks perfect, right? So let's click the check mark. Step 4, click the check mark. The answer is 404. Step 5, use the fill handle to copy down the formula in H6. Make sure you're in H6, point to the fill handle, thin black plus, double click. Done. That easy. Step number 6, click cell A18. Type the word class average. The words, sorry. Steps, I need to confirm my entry. Step number 7, format cell A18 with bold italic formatting, and then merge and center A18 to B18. So I'm actually going to click square A18. I'm going to do my bold. I'm going to do my italic. Now I'm going to highlight A18 and B18. And I'm going to go to home, alignment, merge, and center. That now puts me on step number 8. Click cell C18. Choose home editing AutoSum menu button. Make sure you click the down arrow. Home editing AutoSum is the sideways M. Click the down arrow, very important. So you could choose the word average. Average is a different type of math. It adds them all up and divides by how many there are. It's highlighting the appropriate squares. So it doesn't even say it to complete. It says in step 9, complete the entry in cell C18. So I'm going to use the check mark. And then use the fill handle, this is part of step 9, to copy the average formula from C18 all the way over to G18. Leave it highlighted. Step 10 says decrease the decimal in the range of selected cells so only one decimal place is displayed. So that's home, number, decrease decimal. Whoops, I went one too many. So I did increase because I accidentally clicked one extra time. Step number 11 says insert a new column to the left of column I. So I'm going to right click the letter I, black down arrow, choose insert. Step 12, enter student average in cell I4. So I click I4, I type student average. Okay. And it says step 13, click cell I6, choose home editing AutoSum menu button and choose average. So home, editing group, AutoSum menu button, choose average. But don't complete the entry. This time AutoSum selects the wrong range because if you think about it, the quiz total should not be included. That's too many squares. We only want the quizzes. So we need to highlight step 14. Use the mouse to drag and select the correct range of C6 to G6. So make sure this says C6 to G6 instead. Okay? And complete the entry. When they say complete the entry in this case, I know we're going to copy the formula, so it's easier to click the check mark. Make sure you're in square I6 for step 15. Step 15 says use the fill handle in cell I6 to copy the formula down. Point to the fill handle, thin black plus, double click it. Voila. Step 16, click the exam worksheet tab. I'm going to zoom in some for you. Go even a little bigger. And select the empty cell under the exam total for Ashley. The exam total for Ashley would be H6, which they said here. Step 17, use AutoSum to add the section 1 to section 5 exam marks, then copy the formula down. So this is practice, right? We're in square H6. We go to Home, Editing, AutoSum. That's the correct range. Click my check mark. Point to the fill handle in H6. Double click. There's the rest of my answers, and it says to save my work. I'm going to go to the next portion of the book now. Using relative and absolute cell references. So this part gets a little confusing for students, so I'll do a little bit of a reading here, see if it helps, and I'll also add in a few things as I can. Cell references make it easier to copy formulas when you want to perform the same calculation with new numbers each time. Without cell references, each calculation would need to be typed individually, like with a calculator, slowly and tediously. A relative cell reference, which is the default in Excel, is one in which the location of the cell remains relative to the cell that contains the formula. This makes it repeating the same calculation many times quick and easy. For example, if the formula A equal A3 minus B3 is in cell C3, the relative position of A3 is 2 cells to the left of C3, and B3 is 1 cell to the left of C3. When you copy the formula to another cell, the cell reference is changed to be in the same relative position. So if you copy the formula equal A3 minus B3 from cell C3 down to C4, the formula there will be equal A4 minus B4. Excel updates the references. Another way to look at it is the one we just did here in square H6. Equal sum of C6 to G6. Basically, that's saying add the 5 squares to my left. So if I copy down like we just did, this formula here in H7 says just add the 5 squares to my left and name those squares for me, which happens to be C7 to G7. So it updated my formula to say equal sum C7 to G7. That's the magic of relative cell references. Okay. So remember that relative cell references change when they're copied. Now we're going to talk briefly about absolute cell references. In some situations, you don't want the cell reference to change when you move or copy the formula. To ensure the cell reference does not change, use an absolute cell reference. So in other words, absolute means locked. So think of it as being locked in place, that the cell reference will not change when copied. To make a cell reference absolute, start with a relative cell reference such as A1 and add a $ in front of the column and row components. So it looks like $A, $1. Where a lot of students get confused here is they see these dollar signs and they all of a sudden think money or weird mathematics. All it means is don't change. And if you have a $ in front of the column and the row components, it means don't change the square at all. If you have a $ just in front of the column letter, it means don't let the column change. If you have it just in front of the row number, meaning $1 means don't change the row number. They're giving an example of a absolute function here. If the formula equal A3 minus B3 is entered with the $ meaning absolute in cell C3 and then copied to C4, the formula in C4 would be equal $A, $3. See, that part doesn't change, but the B3 became B4, the second part. Okay, that's the magic of absolute. Now, mixed cell references, it's also possible to create a mixed between a relative and an absolute reference and a cell reference. That's what I was just mentioning a minute ago. Basically speaking, if you have a $ just, so for example, a $ just in front of the A is a reference to cell A3 where the column reference is locked. Can't change. Similarly, if you had just a $ in front of the number 3, you would have just the row component that doesn't change instead. Instead of typing in these $signs, the easiest way to do it is use the F4, that's the function 4 key on your keyboard. Now be aware if you're on a laptop type computer, you might have to press a special key to make the function keys actually work. I might actually have to do it on my keyboard, I'll have to see. I don't think so because I'm not on a laptop right now. Okay, so you can also display and print formulas. To see a formula you've entered, you must first select the cell and then check the formula bar because it's the result of the formula that is displayed in the worksheet. This means that to check your formulas, you have to click each cell and review them one at a time. An easier way to do it is to go to the Formulas ribbon and choose the function to show formulas. They're showing you an example here. Here's a bunch of numbers and stuff. But when they go to the show formula function, it shows that these three squares are doing a mathematical formula. It's found here on the ribbon. Formulas, formula auditing group, show formulas. I'm moving on now to develop your skills E3D3. I'm going to skip step number 1. I'm going to do step 2 on the exam worksheet. So I'm going to make sure I'm on exam. Enter 150 in cell H, step 2. Enter 150 in cell H5. So I'm going to go to H5, type 150. And 40% in I5. So we added those two values in. Step number 3 says in cell I6. So I'm in I6 now. Type equal H6 divided by H5, but don't complete the entry yet. Cell H6 shows Ashley's total exam grade. This will change for each student when we copy the formula. Cell H5 is the total number of points the exam is worth, in this case 150, which should not change for each student. Therefore, H5 needs to be an absolute reference. Okay? So see how it's H6 divided by H5? But the H5, we want to use this 150 every single time. So this is where step 4 says, while still in edit mode, meaning my cursor's after this H5, press the F4 key on your keyboard. That's function 4, okay? The very top row of your keyboard. On the keyboard to make the reference H5 absolute, dollar signs are placed in front of the column and row components. If you accidentally press F4 too many times, you just keep circulating through to get to the one you want. They're giving you the tip I gave you a minute ago. Some keyboards you have to press the FN key. That's generally speaking on laptops to make it work correctly. Okay. Step 5 says continuing in edit mode in cell I6, type a multiply and I5. So you can type I5. And step 5 also says I5 needs to be absolute. So I'm going to do F4 again. So the final formula should look like this. Equal H6 divided by $H, $5, multiply $I, $5. Remembering that those two squares don't change because we don't want the 150 or the 40% to change. So in other words, we're kind of making a percent out of this. Step number 5 says we can finally confirm our entry. 33% should be your answer. Step 6 says copy the formula down. So that's where make sure you're in square I6, point to the lower right corner for the fill handle, double click. There's the rest of your answers. Freshness. Love that. That was step 6. Step 7, click cell I7 and ensure the formula copied correctly. The formula should be equal H7 divided by $H, $5, multiply $I, $5. So my absolutes worked perfect. Freshness. Step number 8, click the quizzes worksheet tab and enter 500 in cell H5. So H5, I'm going to type 500. That's the max score for all the quizzes. And 20% in J5. Okay. Step number 9, enter this formula in J6. So I'm already in J6, equal H6 divided by H5. Now, remember the dollar signs, you can just press H4. Now, you can type them in if you want, but I don't recommend it. So then I'm going to put J5, I'm going to press F4. That's a little bit faster. If you prefer to type it all in, type it all in. But the final formula should look like the book, as well as what I have. Equal H6 divided by $H, $5, multiply $J, $5. Very similar to the one we just did. We're trying to see what was their overall percent. And it says, doesn't say it specifically, but we can now confirm our entry. 16% out of 20% is pretty good. Step 10 says copy the formula down J. So make sure you're in J6, go to the fill handle, double click. There you go. Now step number 11, click the final grades worksheet tab. And notice the final grade now includes grades for the quizzes. So they had made a formula earlier here for the quizzes to get these quiz percentages from the other sheet we just did. If I click in square C6, you'll notice equal quizzes J6. That's the exact kind of formula we did in the last chapter. The book had already set this up for us by clicking here. They clicked the quizzes sheet, they clicked J6, and then they fill handled down to row 17. So save your changes. That's step 12. Moving on in the book. Creating names for cells and ranges. This is really cool. When you need to refer to the same cell or range of cells repeatedly in your formulas, consider creating a name for that cell or range. It's easier to remember a name than to scroll and click around your workbook looking for the cells you want to use. It's especially true if you're using a cell or range from another worksheet or even another workbook. Note, cell names cannot contain spaces. You can create names directly in the name box. So here is the name box. We're going to get into that. You can also create, edit, or delete cell names using the name manager. Oh, and you can also name ranges from the ribbon, the formulas tab on the ribbon. I didn't read that part, sorry. Name references are automatically absolute. That's the other advantage. They're automatically absolute. That is, the reference will not change when moved or copied. So formulas define names is where you find it. Using cell names and formulas, you can use a cell name in a formula just as you would any other cell reference. The cell name can be typed or the cell can be selected with the mouse. You can also begin to type the first few letters of the name and then double-click the name from the autocomplete list that appears. So I'm going to go on to the steps here. I think I'm going to actually make the book print a hair bigger. There we go. I can see that a little better now. Step, develop your skills E3D4. Save your workbook. We're not doing that. Step number 2, on the final grades worksheet, select the range of G6 to G17. So final grades, G6 to G17. Select it. Click inside the name box. So that's here where it says G6. Click, leave it highlighted blue, type final. Just the word final, and press enter. So you've named that group of squares final. That's all you did there, which is really cool. Step 4 says beginning in square I5, enter the following data. So I5. Okay, so I just did that with the enter key, typing in what we needed to type. Step number 5 says add bold and italic formatting to the range of I5 to I8. So I5 to I8, highlight it. That's home, font, bold. And auto fit the column width to fit the text you just entered. So I could point between I and J and double click. Now it auto fit. In cell J6, so I'm going to go to square J6. I'm going to enter the formula equal max final. So equal max parenthesis, and I'm just going to type the word final. Notice how it already highlighted the squares because that group of squares is named final. Isn't that really cool? And then press enter. Step number 7. In cell J7, type equal min parenthesis and use the mouse to highlight G6 to G17. You'll notice it put the word final in for me. It says in step 8, close the parenthesis, type the closing parenthesis, shift 0, and then press enter. Step 9, type equal average parenthesis and type FI. And then use the mouse to double click the word final here. And then close off the parenthesis and press enter. So they showed you 3 different ways to do that. That was step 10 that I just did, even though it was cut off here from visibility. There's even a 3rd way you can actually do from the ribbon, formulas ribbon, but I'm not going to get into that. So step 11 says apply bold formatting and % style to all these numbers from J6 to J8. So I highlight J6 to J8. I'm going to make it bold, home font bold, and percentage style is just clicking the % symbol here. Freshness. Step number 12, enter this data in the range of A21 to B25. So I'm going to go down to A21. I'm going to type what I see here in the book. It says values and then quizzes. Whoops, be sure you spell this correctly because we do end out referring to these squares as named ranges. So if your spelling is off, it's hard to fix. And you'll notice we're typing in the % symbol instead of using it, typing 0.4 and then converting it to a %. It says auto fit the width of column A to fit the word participation in cell A24. So if I point between A and B and double click, it auto fits to make that fit a little bit better. Step 14. Whoops, sorry, I scrolled the wrong thing there. Select cell B22. B22. That 20% for quizzes. And choose formulas, defined names, define name. So that's formulas, a totally new tab. Defined names if you have group names. And you want to click define name. It looks kind of like a name tag. You don't need the down arrow. Just click define name. It's going to suggest the name quizzes, and it refers to the final grade sheet square B22. Step 15 was to ensure those things. And now click OK. Step 16, repeat step 14, but for cell B23. So I click cell B23, formulas, define names, define name. Make sure it says projects up here. Click OK. Step 17 is to repeat the process for B24 and then B25. So now that I'm in B24, formulas, define names, define name, make sure it says participation. Click OK, which is the word to the left of it. Now I do B25. That's formulas, define names, define name. Make sure it says exam. Click OK. So we've named each of these squares. Gets a lot easier to use in a formula that way. Step 18, choose formulas, defined names, name manager. So that's formulas, defined names, name manager. And it shows all your named ranges. Isn't that really cool? It shows what value it is, what square it refers to. If you need to widen these columns, you can always widen them. And do note that this is in alphabetical order. That's why it's not ordered the same way you did them here. This is just alphabetical. That's all it is. Okay. And yes, we are verifying what's in there. Step 19, click the quizzes worksheet tab so we can close this. Then close the name manager. It says it in step 18. Step 19 says click the quizzes worksheet tab. Click square J5 where it says 20% and type equal quizzes. Okay. You'll also notice it's naming the little range right here. I pointed with my finger by accident. And the formula and then press enter. So it's the same 20% we had before, but now it's magic because if that changes on the final grade sheet, it's updating the percentages here. That's the real magic. Step number 20, click the exam worksheet tab, click cell I5, and type equal exam. Press enter or whatever you want to do. Step 21 says switch back to the final grades sheet and change the values in B22 and cell B25. So just make a vague memory here. This value here is 33%, but the value above it's 40. We're going to see some change in a moment. We're going to go to the final grade sheet. In cell B22, make it 10%. Notice some data already shifted in the calculations already there. And 50% goes in square B25. Some changes already happened there. And it says the quiz grades now reflect a grade out of 10% instead of 40%. See, quizzes drop down to the 10%, and the exam ones are now between a 50% one. So that's basically going to be it with this chapter. We're going to save our changes. And it says close Excel. So we can do that. As a reminder, the next part of the book is usually the quiz. After the quiz comes the review exercises, the reinforce your skills that I want you to do. There's 3 of them. Try to submit them to Canvas. Always ask for help if you need help through email, whatever methods of communication I've given you. And of course, the apply your skills come after the reinforce your skills. So we're doing great. I hope you're enjoying this video to see if you have to review or if you got stuck anywhere. So we'll see you next time for chapter 4. Thank you much.